for us in order to do any of our animation work here. Once that's done, we're going to kind of minimize our track selection here. I'm going to open up the copy-paste rollout, as well as our key info rollout. And I'm actually going to kind of slide these two together here, because those are going to be what we're going to be working in back and forth. One thing about the Bipid is you want to set keys and everything. You'll still work with our auto key down here, but never use the set key button because you're going to get some rather strange results sometimes, and some rather off the wall and bad things can happen if you just use this key, because our Bipid keying info gives us several different kinds of keys that we can set that work a little bit better with bipedal movement for hands and legs and feet and all that kind of good stuff. In order to create our movement, let's do kind of a simple fun run cycle here. We're going to need to create poses. A lot like we did in cat, where we're going to create a pose and then animate between the two extremes. We're going to do something similar here. Before we get going, we have to create a collection, and that's this little sunshine button down here. We'll want to hit that, and it'll create a brand new collection that we can then rename. We can name ours Run or something along those lines. Then we're going to want to switch over from posture mode to pose mode, which is going to save the entire skeleton rather than just parts of that skeleton. If you wanted to resize your skeleton on one side and then kind of copy that side over to the other side, then you'll stick with posture and you'll paste opposite over while you're in setup mode or figure mode. But we're going to do pose mode here. And now we have to pose our character for some extremes that we might show in a run cycle. As always, please use reference. Even if it's just a mirror that you run in place in front of, or videotape yourself. Cameras are everywhere now. We've got them all on our cell phones, so this is a good way of getting some reference. Even if it's reference files that you may have from books or classes that you've taken. I know I've made a few for students of my own here that we'll do plotting out of different run cycles in our traditional animation style. Just another reason that learning how to draw and really knowing where animation kind of came from and how the traditional animators truly work comes in real handy here. So please use reference. It is wise, and it will make your run cycles and walk cycles and dancing and moving and any kind of motion that much better here. Now that I've said that, we're going to kind of just wing it for the purposes of our demonstration. So our run cycle may not turn out quite as nice as this little guy we've got running here, but it will get to the tools learned so that you can do this on your own later. Just remember, important, use reference. Really take those observational skills to the next level and look at how things move and act and behave in the real world. That being said, let's do the best we can for demonstration purposes here. And I'm going to kind of give our guy a different, maybe he's in full stride here. So I'm going to kind of open this up. We'll turn off our grid there so we can see what we're doing. And maybe pull up there. Good deal. We'll kind of take his hand, get my move tool, and we'll put up green leg back. So we'll put green arm forward, and then blue arm back there as well. We may double click or click more than one bone here for the, and we'll turn him a little bit, as well as maybe adjust some other things as we go. Again, this may be a little bit stiff of a movement for right now, but I'd say that is worth saving a pose. I like to turn my save frames on, which mine are already on. I almost always work with my save frames there if I can. And I like to kind of zoom in on this because what we're going to do is use the snapshot from our viewport here. You've got several options underneath our copied poses here. One is capture snapshot from the viewport, one is capture snapshot automatically, and the other one is no snapshot whatsoever. But this is really nice because when I go ahead and I copy the pose, it's going to give me a little thumbnail here of what this pose looks like, so that if I am not too bright and don't name my poses, we can call this a full stride or something along those lines. And that description plus this little thumbnail here is going to tell me exactly what pose I'm about to load in as well. Now that we've got that in our copy poses here, we can load them in by using the paste poses. We've got paste and paste opposite, so that's pretty good. In order to get back to our just kind of standard, let's go ahead and hit the figure mode button, and that kind of resets him. And then when we turn it back off, we've still got our pose here that I can paste in, and we didn't lose anything there. So again, back, let's click figure mode, then unclick figure mode, so we're back in animation mode. And let's get the next extreme in line here. If you want to, you can Alt-X to make that pelvis bone invisible, because on the inside here we've got this Bipid bone, our actual biped bone. It's the center of gravity, and they like to hide it inside this thing, which makes it incredibly difficult to kind of grab hold of sometimes. But that's all right. We're going to grab this guy and we're going to bring down, especially if I kind of turn my grid back on, here's our ground layer. I'm going to bring him down a little ways, like he's made contact with the ground here. We know he's going to make contact with the blue foot since it was in front for our walk cycle there, so I'll bring him up and maybe even over a little bit so that it's directly underneath the center of gravity. And then we'll bring his green leg kind of like it's getting ready to pass in that passing position and breakdown position there. There we are. And then we'll do kind of a similar thing here. We'll bend his whole body down a little bit there. The farther he leans, the faster he's running, right? And then his arms, we'll just rotate a little bit here. Should be fairly low at his side, but we never want anything to be perfectly symmetrical here, so we'll leave those a little bit out there. And maybe his head goes down. And that's a good place to start anyway. You might want to rotate his hips a little bit, or even make, some room for that impact. Like actually he'd be going the other way, right? So the impact is pushing that side up just a little bit, and then we'll compensate by bringing his foot back to the ground here. Okay, that's at least a place to start. It's probably not the best thing in the world here, but this guy's still a little back, so his arm's a little bit forward here, and vice versa. And we'll bend these as we need to, even worry about things like fingers and all that good stuff as we continue on. That being said, let's kind of get him into the same position here in my save frames by Alt-W to blow that up a little bit bigger. And I'm going to copy another pose. This pose, I'll say, would be our passing position or breakdown shot. All right, now that we've got two different poses, full stride and passing position, we're set to really kind of start animating. So a walk cycle, if we're going to do a run cycle here, is going to be a little faster than a walk cycle. Let's say on average twice as quick at least as a walk cycle. And if we do our walk cycles on, let's say, march time, which is about 12 frames per step, we can cut that down in half to maybe about 6 to 8 frames for a run cycle. So now that we've got our two positions, I'm going to go ahead and put him back in full stride mode by coming down to this little copy pose drop down, selecting full stride mode, and then the two paste choices here, I've got paste pose to put him back in there. I'm going to turn my auto key on now because we're about to start animating. But remember, don't ever set a key using the key button down here when working with your biped. Instead, you'll want to use the keys inside the key info. And I want to select all the bones in my biped so that I select a key for every single one of them in this case. And we'll open up our copy paste and our keyframe info, and we'll set the key using this little red button here. So he's got a good place to start. And then let's say if we want up in the air, I would say it'd be a little slower coming down, and then he'll launch off from the ground a little bit. So let's give him 8 keyframes before the next pose is set in here. So we move our slider over to 8. We switch from full stride to passing position, and we will paste the pose in. And you'll see that we are already animating between the two here. Then he'll launch up a little bit quicker, and let's say maybe by frame 14, 6 this time instead of 8, we can go ahead and switch back to the full stride pose. Only this time, we can use the other paste option here, which is paste pose opposite. So you've only ever got to create extremes for one side of the body. Luckily, it'll do the hard work for us and swap those positions. And we're off to a start. I won't say a great start, but we're off to a start. Here we go. 6, and we're going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you're good at math, you probably know that between 14 and 22, that's 8 frames. And we're going to go back to our passing position and paste opposite there as well. Okay, so we've got almost the full walk cycle, or the full run cycle, I should say. We just need to bring it back home so that it starts over again at the same key here as our first one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about to frame 28. I'm just going to kind of hold down Shift and copy that keyframe by dragging it over to 28. At this point, I can turn my auto key off for now and come down to my time configuration button here. And let's just